Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Tulley, President and Executive Writing Coach at Defend, Publish, and Lead. Welcome to episode 168. I tried TickTick for opening and closing writing sessions. I've done several episodes about writing sessions and how we get productive during them, how we think about how we enter into writing, how we actually make writing happen when we don't feel like it. This has been a little bit of an ongoing obsession for the last couple of weeks because that's what I'm in the middle of writing about myself for an upcoming book on writing project management. But one of the things that I wanted to think about more concretely is this. I talked with a faculty member the other day about having an opening ritual. And what I meant by that was that, I have a set way that I get into writing, and that makes writing a little bit easier for me. It's not the same every day, but it's pretty close. It's got some boundaries that look similar. And I've talked about both opening rituals and also the way that I actually get into my writing during the day. And what that means is that a ritual might be, or how I get into going to the spot where I'm going to go do my writing. So I mentioned I love coffee. I get a cup of coffee. I go to the library. I know that that's part of the ritual. I might listen to music ahead of time to know that I'm going to do that. And for the record, I'm not able to do that every time. Let's say I have a class right before my writing time. There's no time to go do some of those things. But a lot of times I do have generally about a half hour before I'm able to start writing. And I use that half hour for a commute and I go to do the writing first. A lot of times when I taught first, I might have, say, 10 minutes where I walked across campus. I was able to grab a cup of coffee on the way, go to my spot in the library and do some work. I never wrote in my office as a faculty member. It never was a great place for me to get any work done for lots of reasons, kind of noisy. We had a tree next to my office and they were always like doing something with chainsaws or trimmers or noisy appliances to keep, do all the maintenance and upkeep on campus. So for me, I just could not get anything done there. But you might have a spot where you go, to your office, or if you work from home, you might have a way that you get into your writing rituals there. But one of the things that I talked about with this faculty member, coming back to that, was the idea of what happens when you change that you're trying to change those behaviors. How do you remember how to do them? So for example, like you might have very good intentions, like, okay, the next time I go to a writing session, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z to get into my writing. Or I might be closing out a writing session in a certain way. And I talked about closing writing sessions in a previous episode. I'll link to these in the show notes if you've been if you haven't heard the last couple of episodes about this topic. And one of the things that I came to realize is that it would be really helpful if we had some kind of a reminder that would pop up, not like a calendar reminder, because I know for me, that isn't going to do anything for me. I get so many calendar reminders during the day. I have now learned to tune them out. I know for me, just setting, that kind of thing, like a warning, like 15 minutes before a writing session wouldn't do it for me. And so I've been on the lookout for something new. The other thing is that my writing is not necessarily at the exact same time every day. So it's difficult to schedule, okay, well, I'm writing at 10 a.m., Monday, Wednesday, Friday, especially on sabbatical this semester. That is not the case. My writing's been at some different times. When I have a more regimented writing schedule, that might potentially work. So anyway, what I tried to do was look for apps that would send a reminder when you were in a certain location, because it occurred to me the most helpful time to get that opening list of behaviors or closing writing session behaviors would be when you're actually going to the place to write and have them pop up. So I explored TickTick, which is a free app that you can get that is a reminder app, like all kinds of other reminder apps. And I know before you glaze over, I know a lot of us have so many apps we don't want anymore. I want to point out I'm using it for this one specific thing. So I am going to share some slides, and what I'm going to do with these is walk through how I set up a quick reminder that when I am in the library, so that's my way of doing it. When I'm in the library, I get a little flip up list on my phone because it knows I'm at the library and it's telling me what I need to do. Now, obviously, if you set a location reminder on your, if you use the app and you set a location reminder and you go to that location for other things besides writing, that could potentially be a little bit annoying. You might want to tie it to a calendar versus location. But for me, I'm not coming in the library for anything else. I usually, if I have to do any other business here, like get a book or print something, I will do that when I'm here writing. So I don't have another reason to really be in here. So I want to show on screen just a couple of things I found out about this app, because I do like to try new apps for specific things. So for the record, I probably am not going to use it for anything else. I have some other pretty well established tools that I'm already using, and I don't think everybody needs to use this. You might be able to figure out a way to do this with something you're already using, but I love it for this one particular purpose. So the app again is called TickTick, like tick, T-I-C-K, T-I-C-K, like you're ticking something off of a list, like a check mark. It's just free. I did see it on desktop. It was on my phone as an app I could get. It was indeed free. And all I did with it was play with it for about 3 minutes. And I realized I could make myself have a flip up list or a pop-up list on my phone when I got in a certain location. This is probably not revolutionary for people that are really tech skilled, but for me, it did two particular things, which I'm going to show on screen, that I have not seen before. And I'm only planning to really use the app for this particular purpose. I keep track of stuff in other locations. But pretty much when I opened up the app, what I'm showing on screen is how I added a quick task on there. One thing I really like about this app is it's pretty simple. There's not a lot of extra stuff. I think there's some ways you can do more with it if you of course, do their in-app purchases or whatever. But I like it that when I opened it up, first thing I saw was a plus sign to add a task. So I did that, and you can see on screen, if you're looking at it on YouTube, you can see that I started adding in a task I might have in my opening ritual. One of the nice things about it is underneath every task you add is you've got a spot where you have a calendar. You have a spot where you can add an image or a picture or anything that needs to go with your task for today. So here would be another way that I could see this being very useful. I've mentioned before that sometimes I will brainstorm using whiteboards. So let's say I wanted to make sure that the day I wanted to write about when I remapped an article using a whiteboard, so I wrote out, a new outline on a whiteboard, I wanted to make sure that outline immediately popped up for me when I got in my writing session. Like if you have some picture that's associated with what you're doing, or you could even put in the note a link to, for example, say if you use like an Asana board or you keep track of all your scholarship on a Google spreadsheet, you can put links in the note to pop up so you're able to look at them right then and there. The other thing that's on here, there is a spot to, of course, edit the notes. You can name the note or the task something and then list subtasks or descriptions underneath it. So for me, another thing that would be really helpful here would be if I was going to put some other scholarly tasks, I could see something like I've got a call for proposals or a call for papers that I need to address. I might have the link to where that call is so I can get it again really quickly. Again, I store most of this stuff in my Asana project management board because that's where I keep track of it. But you can set reminders in Asana to like pop up and do some of these things. But in this case, if you wanted something a little bit more simple, you could do other things besides the opening and closing ritual. Again, what I'm going to talk about how I'm using it is for this specifically, but there is the ability to add all kinds of other things. You can also set, I noted on a calendar, you can set a recurring time. So for example, if you want your opening list of tasks that you might do when you open a writing session. So for example, if you know the very first thing that you'd like to do every time when you open up a writing session is to open up a Google Doc to take notes or to log in a writing journal or to read the last two paragraphs of whatever you wrote or to read, if you're doing Patricia Goodson's 50 exercises for productive writing. I think that's the name of that book. We've talked about that one before on here. Maybe you're going to do one of those exercises before you start writing. Whatever those entry points are into your writing, you can set them to occur both in time, so like in a repeating time on specific days. You can also have them show up at location. So the first screen that I'm showing is one that just shows me setting, like if I wanted to set it for a specific day, I could do that. You could just, of course, pick the day and then the task will show up as a notification. You do have to accept notifications for it to show up on your phone. But here's the thing that I got really excited about. So one of the things I noticed is there are, of course, those three little dots that mean more that we've seen on screen for different types of tools that we're using. And when I open that up, there's a whole bunch of different things. So I could make a template for a reminder, or a template for a particular checklist or a note. That's great, because let's say I'm the kind of person that likes to check tasks off my list. And maybe in my opening writing session, my template is that I want to make sure I reread the last two paragraphs of whatever I wrote. Maybe number two is to read the comments that I left to myself from the last writing session. And maybe the third one is to tweak one sentence to be more clearly in every writing session. So whatever those things are, I could set that as a template task and then populate it to come on repeat, to show up whenever I want it to show up. I don't have to remake that note all the time. So that was really, I thought, really amazing. I could also make some comments to myself if I want to make some reflections about my tasks. I could do that. But the thing that blew my mind that I'm more excited about than probably anything is that with tasks, you can actually set a location reminder versus a time reminder. So in my case, because I like to write in the library, every time I come to the library, this task shows up now as a notification on my phone. And again, you can turn on sounds on and off for different things. So mine does a little chime like ding dong, when it's time for the library. I don't know, that's probably not a great example of what my chime sounds like. But so I set that, and then I on screen am showing what it actually looks like. So it shows a little red dot of where I am, and it's pretty accurate. Like, it shows me kind of in the corner of the library where I actually am. And so I have that now set. So as soon as I arrive at the library, this task will pop up. But here's another thing that's kind of amazing. When I'm leaving, I can also set a task list for if I'm leaving, I can actually set a location reminder as well. So I can set one for an opening ritual and for a closing ritual. So I will show on a note what that looks like. Yes. Okay. So what I made for my opening writing ritual is I have it shown on a screen that I'm showing on YouTube, where I can designate if it's urgent and important, if it's not urgent, if it's urgent and unimportant. It goes with that Eisenhower matrix where you make decisions. We've probably seen this a lot. So you're able to also designate the tasks. So that's something that else is really useful. But one of the things that's really helpful about it is my opening writing ritual. If I know what those tasks are, I could make that a shorthand. So if I would actually click on that task, it will list what those tasks are. So for example, for me, one of the things that I do is I find a spot in my library, I open my laptop, I immediately look at my Penzu notes, because I take a lot of notes in Penzu when I'm working on stuff in projects or progress. And I've talked about that on an episode before. So when I say opening writing ritual, I know what that is. And I also know it will pop up now when I come into the library, and I'll say, ding, here's your list. And for me, yes, I know I need to do that. I've been kind of ingrained in my particular way to open my writing session. But for people that are trying a new session, this is particularly important, because it does allow for you to have that reminder every day, like, oh yeah, I said I was going to do these three things. And the same thing with a closing ritual. So I didn't develop one for this podcast because I really want to think about this more. But on my episode about closing rituals or closing a writing session, and I believe I have it in another episode about new goals for the year. One of my new goals is to make sure that I always stop writing 8 minutes before I am ready to go. And so how I was handling this was setting a timer on my phone when I started writing. And I still have that listed in my opening ritual. So if I would open up my opening a writing session, if I would open that up, the last thing on that list is set your timer for 8 minutes before you have to leave, because 8 minutes is the time that I'm allowing to close the session. So I can set a reminder that shows when I'm leaving, I need to make sure I take care of something. So leaving is obviously like movement with my phone. But one of the nice things it will do for me if I set a leaving reminder is that let's say I forget to close my writing session and I get up and I move, my phone is obviously going to move, and that's going to trigger that leaving or that closing reminder and make a little ding. So for me, if I get slide into my bad habits of not saving my work when I'm leaving, not grabbing my power cord, since I tend to write to the last second and then run, one thing that it will do is remind me, you didn't do your closing ritual yet. The other final thing, I didn't take a screenshot of this, is as you do the task, the opening ritual and the closing ritual for the day, there's a very satisfying little check mark, a tick mark, that you can tick it off that you did it. And the other thing that's kind of fun in here, if you're somebody that really wants to see how well you're keeping with a habit, you can see how many times you did your you opened a writing session the way you wanted to, the times that you wanted to close it. So I really recommend this app. I'm gonna try it for the rest of the semester and see how I like it. There are probably other apps that do location reminders. But for this particular one, that's all I'm using it for, is just for these writing rituals. I don't plan to probably add other things, but I did show on screen another thing that I put on here just in case is I know I have a conference proposal coming up that I want to write and submit. I did put that in the urgent and important task spot on the Eisenhower matrix. You could see how different deadlines look. I have them dated, but I also have like not urgent and unimportant. So for example, I know I need to revise a syllabus for fall. It's not urgent and it's unimportant right now, but that's going to be important later on. So if you want to use this app to keep track of lots of scholarly things, I think it's a really simple task. You can actually drag and drop tasks. So maybe it will become urgent and unimportant, or not urgent and important. So for example, I could see a scenario that by the time I get to summer, the English 500 syllabus needs to go to the not urgent, because it's still not urgent yet, but important. So I may end up using this app for a couple of teaching things I don't want to forget. So for example, maybe every Wednesday in my gender studies class, I want to do this particular thing. I could time out a reminder either on a day or on a location that when I'm approaching that classroom, I'm doing this one thing I want to do. So I like it for the simplicity. I will let you know how it goes, but I always like to try tools that I'm actually using to share with you in terms of scholarly productivity. On the subject of scholarly productivity, I'm happy to announce that we are partnered again with the Textbook and Academic Authors Association. For the upcoming year. I've said this before on the podcast. Most of you know probably how I feel about this. I don't like podcast ads and sponsors interrupting content, because if you're somebody trying to get some quick scholarly productivity tips, you don't want to be advertised to. So I've kind of limited any sponsorship of this podcast to one or two organizations that are scholarly productivity in nature and things I actually use. So Textbook Academic Authors Association is a great organization. We do have a discount. It's always in our show notes. If you want to join them, you get a discount code. Again, they are my cheapest scholarly membership for a year, so I feel like they're a great value. But the other thing that I like about them is that they offer just a variety of resources, and they keep talking about how to get more writing completed in a positive, reasonable way. So one of the things I'm showing on the screen right now is just a quick note about their textbook and academic authoring conference. It's coming up June 17th and 18th. Oops, I'm sorry. This looks like the date is wrong here. So I must have clicked a wrong screenshot. I apologize for that. But I will put the correct date up there. I'm not sure why that one is showing as incorrect, but they are coming up in June. And one of the things that's also on the screen that I'm showing right now is that they are posting their April 2024 month of motivation. So one of the things that you can do if you decide to join is they have some extra membership benefits that you can decide if you want to add on. One of them is doing basically some writing support, where you have somebody working with you in more of a group coaching session with a lot of little bonuses. So that's a great one. Another thing that they have coming up that I want to mention that's showing on screen is April 16th. There is a really great webinar coming up on writing better literature reviews. We did some stuff with literature review in the fall, and we generally do run that one on our end in the fall. But if you're looking for support for that in the spring, I encourage you to check out Textbook and Academic Authors Association. So hopefully this was helpful this week, and happy writing.